Ms. Cammack is recognized for 5 minutes, followed by Ms. Capter.
Thank you, Chairman Himes and Ranking Member Steele. I appreciate it. This hearing today is extraordinarily important, and as someone who was raised by a single mom, grew up in a lower income family, and has experienced homelessness, this is something that I think we should be addressing today, talking about how our nation is founded on the principle of equal opportunity, not equal outcome. And so I'm very intrigued by some of the commentary here today. And again, thank you to all our witnesses for appearing before the committee. I think this is a very important conversation. So as we all know, right now we're in the midst of an economic crisis with record inflation that hurts all Americans, but especially lower income families. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the annual inflation rate in 21 hit a 39-year high of 7%. Inflation is, in fact, a tax on every single American, but it is also, in fact, regressive and hurts individuals and families who are on a tighter budget and cannot afford to spend more on goods and services. In my own district, I have seen regularly at the gas pump how that number has gone up and up and up, and the cost of goods has gone up and up and up, and it's especially tight for those on a fixed income. Now, according to a Bank of America report from November that separated inflationary impacts by demographics, those most affected by inflation were, quote, rural households without college graduates, African Americans, Hispanics, and Latinos. Now, I represent a very rural district, so I can attest to the fact that inflation is very real and hurts across the board. Now, inflation has increased every single month since this administration was sworn in, and I'll repeat that because I think it bears repeating. Inflation has increased every single month since this administration was sworn in. President Biden's economic crisis has cost the average American family 2 paychecks and the average family over $3,500 just this last year. 8 out of 11 months since his first full month in office, real wages have decreased under his leadership. Now, what is this president's plan for the economic crisis? More spending. In fact, trillions more in spending. By giving more money to the government, we, the American people, keep less in our pockets. This doesn't grow on a tree. It's pretty simple. The more the government spends, the less we, the American people, get to keep. It's clear the administration's plans are not working. In fact, as I was walking to my office, I saw a CNN poll that stated that 60% of Americans think that this country is on the wrong track. The American people clearly see that. Just look at the recent job approval polls, and they understand what is best economically for all Americans is best economically for communities of color. Now, before COVID-19, under President Trump's economic policies, we experienced record success for all communities. I think we can dive into the statistics of, nearly 7 million people were lifted off of food stamps. Unemployment for women hit its lowest rate in nearly 70 years. Income inequality fell for 2 straight years in a row, and the largest amount in over a decade. The bottom 50% of American households saw a 40% increase in net worth. Wages rose fastest for low income and blue collar workers, a 16% pay increase. The list goes on and on. So, Mr. Rowe, I know that we're limited on time, but in your testimony, you discussed the concept of success sequence, with one of the first input in the equation being a high school degree. I have concerns that with approximately $162 billion in unspent COVID relief funds for schools to safely reopen, schools across the country are still closing. Do you believe that there will be any long-term effects on students who aren't able to attend in-person learning, and how specifically that impacts communities of color?
I believe you asked, is there a long-term impact of what's been happening over the last 2 years to our kids? Absolutely. The level of school closures, the ineffectiveness of remote learning has really just resulted in significant learning loss, which frankly, none of us really know the impact. What's been interesting, though, is if you look at those schools that did remain open over the course of the last 2 years, you had Catholic schools that did incredible jobs of keeping schools open, in person, masked, and safe. There were some charter schools, some district schools, but the vast majority did not. But imagine if you were a parent, that your school was just having remote learning with worksheets and no real-time engagement of teachers, and there was a Catholic school down the street or a charter school down the street that was staying open, that had vibrant instruction, and you didn't have the ability to send your child there. How is that fair? That's what we mean by school choice and the ability for young kids to have a shot. We got to give them a shot to get on that first rung. And in terms of, what we tell young people, you'll never hear our kids, our teachers telling our kids, they've got to wait on the people in this room to pass trillion-dollar redistribution programs in order for them to be successful. What are the factors in their control? And that's why it's important that they understand the series of decisions that give them the greatest rewards, and they understand the consequences if they choose differently. But they got to realize that 97% of the time, if you finish your high school degree, full-time job, and if you have kids, marriage first, the data says poverty can be avoided. It's not a guarantee, but that's important information young people need to know.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rowe. I know my time has expired. Chairman, without objection, if I may submit a question for the record to have all of the witness answer.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentlelady's time has expired, and Ms. Capter is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.